I failed freshman English in college, and I failed on my writing, not on the grammar tests.
Hmm.
And the professor said, "Why do you always write about sports?" And I said, "Did you tell me I needed to write about different things?" He said, "No, I left it up to you." Well, then I wrote about sports. I mean, I'm 17 years old and this is what I know. But he failed me, literally like flunked the class. I had to retake it, later. So I always had this thing that said, you can't write, you can't write. So when
Mm.
I talk about the challenge, you can't have a worse challenge than me. You've been told publicly that you're a failure with writing. You told all through college and high school I couldn't write. But when I went to grad school, my professor said, just vomit on the page and edit it later. Like, just write.
Chris Heivly, it's an honor to have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric, for having me.
But before we get to the book, can we establish some background? Just give us the broad strokes of Chris.
Yeah, well, it's always easy to start kind of chronologically, but I'm going to start with the end. Someone introduced me at a talk I did recently as a serial instigator. And I kind of love that. I'm like, I'm taking that. Sorry. But, from building forts as a kid to was a geographer undergraduate and a graduate degree in geography, which is probably the only geographer you'll ever meet. Maybe. I don't know. That turned into, MapQuest and Rand McNally, which you have to be over 40 to know what Rand McNally is, so cut my chops in the mapping industry. And then, with the success of MapQuest, became an investor, ran a corporate venture fund. This is that I tell people I have career ADD, 3 to 5 years. The last 10 years, just trying to help entrepreneurs and mostly folks on startup communities and how great communities foster great entrepreneurs and great entrepreneurs help create great communities and what that kind of is, and kind of become an expert in that over the last 10 years. And now mostly retired and speak and write. So that's it.
Awesome.
That was the 30-second version.
I love the count. What are you going to do with a geography degree? Oh, build $1 billion company. That's what I'm going to do with it.
Well, I can tell you, as if my dad was sitting here right here, I remember the day I said, I'm going to be a geography major. And he was just like, what the hell are you going to do with that? I was like, I don't know, but I really like this shit. So we're doing it.
Yeah, that was a flyer class I took in college. Actually, I really, really enjoyed it. It is like one of those fascinating things. And I imagine the history that I've read on geography. These things seem boring once they're figured out, but the problem that they present to people who had to figure them out and the creativity it took, or courage in the case of like all the physical adventures, is unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I got a wall behind me out behind that stuff of, antique maps and atlases. And I still love that stuff. And there's history in there and boundary changes, but yeah.
Do you have a favorite historical map?
I have one of my own that I love that's sitting behind me. It's a map of Europe. It's probably circa like 1835. And at that point, it's all hand written or hand drawn. That's probably but the level of detail, Eric, is so, you're just like, how the f did they do this at this time period? Even, most maps are made from other maps, by the way. So how did he incorporate, probably he, a cartographer, do all that? I'll take a picture of it and send it to you and you can see, even like a mountain profile, a 3D mountain profile. That's just like, it's just along the side. It's an afterthought. Yeah. So that's my favorite. I can stare at that for, an hour.
That's awesome. Yeah. Please send me a picture.
Yeah.
I think those historical maps and the stories around them are really fascinating.
And then try to understand how they got to the end product, right? I mean, that's, maybe that's the entrepreneur and both of us saying like, okay, so how the hell did you get to this place, right?
Yeah, and the snapshot that it represents. The one I have hanging in my office is the Salviati map, which I think is like late 1500s, early 1600s, and it's like Europe and Africa are well fleshed out, and it's only the east coast of North and South America, and nothing past it.
Nothing.
So, but they just left the white space,
right?
And so,
but they have a blob, right? They kind of have the outlines of kind of the West Coast, but it's just like I don't know what's going on.
And it's like, there be monsters, like, but the white space is this sort of call to action of like, we gotta finish this map. Show me what's over there and go west.
Yeah.
That's cool. So cool.
Yeah. Well, another area where we're connected. I love the maps. Maps tell a story, man. They really tell a story.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us, you said you're retired authoring, speaking. When did books sort of become a part of your career path?
Yeah, I don't think my story's too much different from anybody else. If I kind of really peeled it back, I'd probably find my dad was an avid reader, probably read 4 to 5 books a week. I enjoy reading. So, I think books were always an important part in our family. I don't, I didn't start writing my first book. Scribe helped me with my second book, but till after he had passed. So maybe in some weird way, I kind of wrote it for him. I don't think so. I think like a lot of people, I just knew that I wanted to say something in a form that I hadn't, that wasn't a 30-minute speech or a 500 word blog post. Right. And I will also say I love the challenge of doing something that scares me.
Mm.
And so, I mean, it really was scary to go, can I really write a book? I don't know. So that's kind of what the book thing did. Obviously, as a speaker, I always knew like tactically it's good to have a book. Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
maybe all those things combined, but I don't think I wrote it for money or, consulting or like a lot of people do. I wrote it kind of for me.
Just to have written it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How did it stack up? I mean, you've climbed many mountains in your career, and you were, so you say, like, intimidated by this in some way. How did it, now looking back, how did it stack up against the difficulty of, building a company or a portfolio or a community?
Yeah. I think you're going to smile when I say this. Whenever we start a company, we're like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. And, what are we going to do? And then there's all that fear and doubt that kind of creeps in and the voices in your head. This was no different. So how does it play out? You just sit down and say, the hell with it. I'm going to do it. And for me, the comfort, which I've now done on 2 and soon a third, is that I heard someone say that there's planners and pantsters as
Yeah.
writers. I'm definitely not a pantster, probably because of that lack of confidence I still have in writing. So the way that I can go against that is to plan and write an outline. And so for me, all the work is in the outline. And once I saw that outline, I'm like, yeah, that's some pretty good stuff. And I know all about those things and I've organized it a little bit. So that's good enough.
Yeah,
Let's
now you're
get
just
started.
checking boxes,
Literally
yeah,
checking
finish
boxes.
answering the questions kind of inherent in it. Yeah, the pantsers nomenclature comes from writing by the seat of your pants. You're just sort of figuring out what comes as you write, which is like very common in fiction. And
Yes.
you can kind of tell who the pantsers and the planners are by who lands their series. Like Patrick Rothfuss, we're still waiting on book 3 for, 10 years, and he's a pantser, or as J.K. Rowling knocks him out every 2 years, and she's a meticulous planner. So yeah, to each their own, but
and to give you perspective,
good to know yourself.
Yeah, good to give you perspective. I know we're going to talk about the 2 business books that I did one with you. I'm writing my first novel, even more scary than a business book, right? And that outline is 157 pages long.
Holy smokes!
It's every scene, who's in the scene, what's going to happen in the scene. That gives me the freedom or the confidence that I can write about that. That's just a story. Tell that little story in there. I got who's in it, what their motivations are, what their goals are. So, it took me 6 weeks to write the outline. So
yeah. What's the novel about?
It's about a founder and a super angel and their relationship over an 18-month period as the company does one of these. And
interesting.
I don't know, are your parents still around?
One of them.
Yeah. So both my parents have passed. They never understood what the hell I ever did. Right. So I think part of this is kind of like, I want to share with people what the founder journey feels like, because you can't really understand it just watching it. You have to be in it. And so I'm trying to share that journey, the ups and downs in every hour, right, of the day. And then how this super angel he's got his own demons kind of come in and out of that relationship.
I like that, the novel approach to that, because, even a biography or an autobiography, you sort of read it knowing that it's a happy ending. Nobody really writes a biography about a disastrous career. And so there's the selection bias. You read the whole thing knowing it worked out. And so the drama is not really visceral. And I think the only nonfiction book that captured the terror of the seat is The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yeah.
And it's really, yeah, if you can write an empathy creation device, I think it'll be a little bit easier to understand
Yeah, we'll
what
see.
founders go through, what leaders go through, why
Yeah,
CEOs get paid a little bit more than, you might expect.
right. And you know, I also love, for me, the part is like not just the empathy across the desk, but what you need to do to actually receive empathy and compassion, and how do you
Hmm.
bake that into your daily journey, and being really self-aware. So obviously my character goes through some of those questions. So yeah, it's what
Yeah.
we've lived for years. That's all.
Okay, so let's do Build the Fort is the book that you wrote. This was the second book you said?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wrote a book called Build the Fort and then a
Yep.
subtitle. And then I wrote this book, which I called Build the Fort. The idea is that Build the Fort's kind of the series.
Okay.
Though, as you might see behind me, they look
I see
completely
two
different.
covers of Build the Fort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What the first one is more for founders. It's kind
Yeah.
of how to start anything is my kind of subline for it. The second one is that I did with Scribe is basically for economic development folks, all the people in a community and what roles they could play to help drive their community forward, whether it's Traverse City or Detroit or Kansas City or Raleigh Durham.
I feel like this has been an area of focus for a really long time. Actually, my very first internship was within economic development and an incubator in Lansing, Michigan. And
Yeah.
like, it's a really fascinating thing. And it was kind of at that peak of like TEDx, Ignite. I mean, it was Startup Weekend.
Yeah. Startup grind.
Techstars
Yeah.
was really like growing, and everybody, kind of all over the country and the world was trying to figure out, how do we build these startup communities? How do we
Yep.
support entrepreneurs or recruit entrepreneurs, support small businesses, and, recognizing them as innovators and job creators and risk takers that lift up the whole city.
Yeah. And the thing that I found, and is that over the last 10 years, that change you just talked about, that it's become important, regardless almost of the size of your city, is that we're moving up from an economic development model that was, let's recruit the new Motorola plant into our place, and that will be good for our economy. And that just doesn't happen anymore. Right. So,
Mm-hmm.
the focus has to be on organic kind of entrepreneurship writ large. And yet most people have no idea how to do that. So I've spent the last kind of 10, 12 years, not only doing it in my community, but figuring out what the drivers are. And then now I get to go around and wax poetic about how smart I am.
Yeah, be the community builder of community builders.
Right. Right. Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right after Serial Instigator. There you go. Add it to your bio.
That two-liner. Yeah. So you guys are, really great enough to work with me on that book. And I'm probably more proud of that than just about anything I've done. Really had a great experience getting it out. Here we are 3 years later. It's still very relevant. People still buy in bulk. I go speak on it, so all the things you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that, kind of the aspirations and the reality of it. What did you hope that book would do for you when you set off on writing it or set off on publishing it?
Just basic, number one New York Times bestseller list, 1 million copies sold, invited to the original TED, not the TEDx, just the basic goals and aspirations.
Yeah. What every sane and balanced, self,
the shit you think about at night when no one's around and you're just you in your head. I had a very realistic view. I knew this was a niche audience, but I knew it needed to be done. I knew that I could promote it and get it into places. I knew it would be a talking vehicle for me. So when I kind of hybrid published my first book, the woman was a very well-known New York agent. And she told me early on, she said, well, just so you know, and I don't know what the real number was, but 98% of all books on Amazon sell less than 500 copies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have some similar data point that you share, but
yeah, it's pretty well known. The median is a few hundred, and the average is not much higher than that. Frankly.
Yeah. So, but so I had, and I didn't think I'd get famous or, because this is nichey stuff, right? So I think my expectations, of course, there's always that little piece of you that says, God, what if this took off? What if this went viral? Right. But that's just, you kind of laugh at those things.
Well, it's a good example. I think this is a good example of a book that makes you famous in a room. Like picture your room where your community is.
Yeah.
And like, if this book, this project makes you famous in that room and recognized and respected and appreciated, and everyone sort of knows who you are and what you stand for and what it's like to work with you and understands the depth of your expertise, then like that book did its job, and your, career and your place in that community is very different than it used to be.
Very well said. I'm going to steal parts of that, starting with the in the room. Yeah. And that's exactly what it did for me. And I'll say even more so. I mean, there's a lot of books about maybe how you start something, aka my first book. The second one is super nichey, but by the way, still unknown to most people in the world about how do startup communities form and how do they flourish and grow and what were the dynamics. And they're completely 180 degrees different than the way most people think it should work. So my point to get out there was kind of to take a big steel bat, and pop people over the head and say, stop. This isn't the same thing. This isn't like running, your government office. This isn't like raising money for your new performing arts center. It's completely different. And yet most people kind of start with those kind of models. And so I just know it needed to be said, and it needed to be said my way, which is stupid simple, right? Like I'm not going to be the smartest talker or writer, but I'm going to make sure it's very accessible. So let me get it out.
Yeah, legibility is an underrated goal. It really frustrates me when people with unique expertise seem to go out of their way, which is most of the academic packaging, to like make the ideas inaccessible or difficult to understand.
And I think that they think they're making themselves look smarter or better, but it's actually the opposite. I think and you being in this, there's that old like Hemingway thing that's like, if you want me to write a quick book, great, but a shorter book takes more time or something along this, right? However.
Yeah, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
Is kind of, I think, the one-liner.
I mean, so like everything I try to do is it's got to be accessible. It's got to be, I want to explain this to my parents, right? Like, here's why I do things. And so, by the way, how many entrepreneurs you see that pitch and just pitch with too many 4-syllable words and acronyms they don't understand. And, that's not helpful. So anyway, that's my approach.
And this is another, I think this book and your authorship of it is another good example of like writing the book only you can write. There's very few people that have had the experience kind of at multiple levels of this game that can speak to the entrepreneur, the investor, the community builder, and the community builder of community builders level. And, if you can make a unique contribution to the canon, it's almost an obligation to do so.
Again, well said. I think I felt that. I think that was a driver. Like, I need to get this out there. I can have hundreds of conversations in a year or two, but maybe this can actually get this in front of thousands, right?
Yeah. How does you're a sought after speaker, and clearly, this book is sort of an entree into working more closely with the humans. So zoom us out from the book, and how does the book fit into, the speaking aspect of your career? I don't even know if you do consulting, do you do engagements with specific communities, or is it kind of an informal mentorship? Like what surrounds the book in your life?
Great question. So I do write a weekly blog, and I have for years. It's now more focused, a little less on entrepreneurship and help for founders. It's more help communities, which is including founders. So there's little bits of that for everyone. That's certainly been my jam the last 3 or 5 years. And so the book and the blog help support that. So, you can bite it in little bites, or you can bite it in a bigger bite. I do a lot of kind of just free mentorship. So if you're in Topeka, Kansas, or let's pick some obscure European city, Itri, Italy, which I think I'm going to go speak at in November, by the way, outside of Rome. There's 5 to 10 people thinking, how can we make our community, a better environment for entrepreneurs to be more successful? And so, I get inbound calls. Everything I do is inbound. I do nothing really, because I don't want that much more work. So if you're inbound, you're already like motivated. Do you know what I mean? You've already kind of crossed the thread. I don't need to sell you anything. This is what I do. But I do a lot of that. And that's just, I have open office hours you can schedule on my website, and I'll talk to anybody about anything. And so that's really cool, because you get kind of the flavors of not just entrepreneurs, but they're the community builders all over the country. And it keeps me current. That's kind of the soup that I kind of, I haven't done any video yet. I've been thinking about it off and on. It sounds like too much work. I don't know if you know, like this AI digital twin stuff. Have you kind of dabbled with any of that or?
I haven't dabbled with it, but I'm
Yeah.
curious about the AI creation suite in general. You know?
Yeah. I went really deep on where, I could put both books. I got probably 750
Mm,
blog posts. I have
mhm.
speeches, audio, video, PowerPoint presentations, and kind of throw it all in. And it's basically kind of gets trained just on you. And then I could provide a chat service to others to say,
Mhm.
hey, Chris, I'm here in Topeka and here's what, I got pretty close and then said, that feels a little egotistical or something. I don't know what it kind of felt a little,
Mm.
but I'm always kind of looking for ways to find different vehicles to get my message out is, I guess, the long-winded answer to your question.
Interesting. Great. I mean, yeah, twist my arm, go speak in, the Italian countryside in
Right.
October.
Oh,
Yeah.
darn. Yeah. We
Yeah.
just got back 2 weeks ago from Istanbul. First time I've been there, and the thing is, you meet our tribe looks the
Yeah.
same everywhere. Right. So yeah, sign me up.
Yeah. I've heard Istanbul is an incredible destination, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we'll be
I
back.
wish they still, it used to be Constantinople, right?
Yeah. Are
I
you going to
really
sing the
wish it was
song now?
still. No. I lament. Most renamings. You're kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. But Constantinople is just such an
Yeah. It has a
unbelievable,
historical
panache
context,
to
right?
it,
Yeah.
and I miss it.
Yeah. That's a map reference, by the way.
Yeah.
A
The,
little
the callback. Yeah, I'm aware. I tried to repress them, but they come out anyway.
Yes.
What is your favorite unexpected good thing that has happened as a result of these books being out in the world for you?
Well,
Constantinople visits aside. Maybe.
yeah. It's the same thing when you speak, when you write, when someone emails you or comes up to you and says, man, that really did it for me. Like, I'm now clear about what I want to do or what I can do. Like, I know you're trying to empower people, but when you actually see the empowerment and they come back to you and give you that feedback, it's like, every time I get a feedback on anything I write, it's always like, thanks for the feedback. It's whatever writer wants. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm still surprised when people go like, hey, I really loved your book. I've like ripped out pages or, whatever. And I've given it to 5 people and, you go, all right, I did all right. So, unexpected is I kind of, maybe you write it for yourself. I know you're trying to write it for others, but when others go cool, you're like, wow, maybe I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think authors with reasonable expectations are sometimes just surprised to find people reading the book at all.
Totally. I don't want to read it again. I know that much, right?
Yeah, I did my time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that still feels good. No matter how many times you get it, no matter where it comes from, and it's unexpected.
Yeah. You had a pretty, I think Brad Feld is an amazing figure in the startup community space. And he's been on my other podcast, actually. I respect and appreciate him a lot. You got him to write the foreword, and I'm curious if there's a backstory there. I'm always interested in, I get a lot of questions as well about, forewords and how much they matter and who should write them and how to decide and how to approach people. Was there a story to this one?
Well, yeah, it's a big story. The big story goes back 10 years ago or more when I met him and I was thinking about doing an accelerator in Raleigh, Durham. And he and David Cohen of Techstars said, here's our whole playbook. Go at it and keep in touch. And so they kind of set my mental, I think I was wired that way anyway, but that whole kind of give first and just we're all in this together, no zero-sum game. But I stayed in touch with them for a while and focused my efforts on my Techstars inspired accelerator and a lot of community building efforts that I was doing, filling gaps. And then around 2017, we shut down our accelerator. Our area had grown up and it's time for me to do something else and kicked in again. And the next thing I'm sitting with Brad and David out in Boulder and we decided to start a consulting company inside Techstars to help other communities do what we had done in Boulder. And so I got to work pretty closely with Brad and the rest of the Techstars team. And in fact, my book and he and a guy named Ian Hathaway, who came to work for me, wrote another book and pretty much within the same year. It was going to be one book and we had kind of played around with that and did some work. And then it was too big. It was too much.
Yeah.
And so, and I think perfectly, by the way, though I was disappointed not to have a book with Brad, which would have been cool, but we split the book into they took a more kind of mindset, mental science approach to startup communities called the Startup Community Way. And then I went where I'm most best, which is I'm going to go down to the street, right? And talk about tactics and, all the squishy stuff. They're going to be the smart guys. I'm going to be the hack, the Philly hack. And so I think the two books ended up complement each other quite well. So then to answer your question, to ask him, say, hey, would you write the foreword and kind of be that bridge between our two books? And of course, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
By the way, he is also my reference to Scribe.
You front ran my next question, which was how did you find your way to us? Yeah.
Yeah. So Brad said, Coach, I've talked to these guys. I don't know if he did a book with you all. Obviously, it would have been years and years ago.
Yeah.
But he and I, we still talk a lot about publishing. He's writing his first novel, by the way, a little more science fiction. And so we've been sharing writing notes and the ups and downs of being a fiction writer and tools and all those kinds of things. So yeah, it's just great to have him write I felt lucky and, I don't know what the right word is. I felt good that he would do that for me because he's the dude, right?
Yeah. I mean, the probably the godfather of the space or the biggest name in it. And, just going back to your goals for the book and what you're hoping to achieve with it, like that is a huge thing. And I suspected that it was not, Brad's a super open guy, but I still expected it was not a cold email to book forward conversion pipeline, which, a lot of people start thinking about their forward when they're like about to publish their book and the manuscript is done. And they're like, I'd really love to get Oprah. Yeah. And it's like, how's that relationship been developing?
Yeah. Cold email her.
Yeah.
Oprah at Oprah.com.
It's probably something sneakier like,
But I'll also tell you though, having Brad write the foreword also, I think probably made it easier to have Steve Case write a testimonial, Richard Florida to write a testimonial. I mean, those are also huge names and, all around our space. And so, I felt, like it or not, people like to be among their peers. So.
Yeah. And it's hard, climbing that staircase of kind of social proof. Everybody knows it's an often shared number. There's, 2 or 3 million books published every year, and gaining this sort of social credibility or proof points of success, usefulness for the book and the author is work. And, there's no such thing as like a better mousetrap kind of solution in this space for sure. So giving some thought to the context of your book and the credibility that you can give it is really important.
No shortcuts. And by the way, you have to make the ask.
Mm-hmm.
Will he? I don't know, but he won't if you don't ask. So he or she, right? So make the ask.
Shooters got to shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What advice do you have for authors who are, I don't know what the right number is for you, 6 years, 5 years, kind of further up the road, considering a book, think it might, benefit them or start to have that itch of like, I think I have something unique to contribute, or I think I have something that's, that I really want to put down and share with the world.
Yeah. I love the question. And I've actually, probably have had 15 to 20 conversations with people saying, so you're a hack. You did it. I think I can do it. I'm like, yes, you can.
Thank you for the insult. Compliment?
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
It's a compliment. I don't know. It's like the classic, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. The whole the whole of the mountain seems much bigger than the actual. And I think as an entrepreneur, we're used to breaking things down into pieces. So for me, being a planner, writing that outline, I think the outline for that book that we worked on together was probably 8 to 10 pages, maybe 12. I don't remember. Gives me, then I can break it down into smaller chunks and I could write that. So I would say write, and if you are nervous about maybe how your skills would translate, then write an outline. That's easy, right? It's only 8 pages. Anybody can do that. It's a science project right? It's an English paper. So, it's one of those things where all of a sudden you turn around and you're like, hey, I just finished that. How'd I do that? Right. I'll ask you the question. How long does it take most people to write a book, especially in like a nonfiction, what we're talking about?
I mean, I've heard people go to a cabin and crank it out in a week. And I've heard people spend 5 to 10 years, it's wildly dependent on the person and their habits and their scope and how they work. And, to some people writing a book is reaching 50,000 words for the first time, and everything
Right.
else is editing afterwards. And, some people edit once and some people edit 10 times. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there.
It's
Some
probably
people,
in months, right? Probably in the 6 to 9 months, maybe.
yeah. I mean, the scribe
4.
process, if you come to us with an idea and just say like, hey, help me write a book, it takes about 6 months. It kind of, 9 on the long run to go from 0 to manuscript. When you've got a professional helping you, pulling things out, and you stay on schedule and you show up to your meetings and stuff
Yep.
like that. Yeah. It's 6 to 9 months to kind of get that manuscript really dialed. But that's also, multiple people contributing hours to that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you from a personal point of view, which I've now figured out really works for me, is I actually adjusted my whole sleep so that I like to not set an alarm. So I want to wake up naturally, but I shifted my sleep to wake up at like 5 or 5:30, and I would go down, I do a little bit of treadmill, eat some breakfast, and then sit down before the family's up, before the sun's up, and in a locked room. And I try to crank out, a couple thousand words. Right.
Yeah.
And, strung that together. First book, probably more like 4 to 5 months. Second book, probably more like 3 to 4, but I had a much thicker outline on the second one. So, and then there's a little bit of discipline in that, but like most things, what am I willing to sacrifice to make this happen? If I think it's just going to magically happen at 3, today I'm going to write at 3, tomorrow I'm going to write at 10. Like, I don't think that's every writer, still think this is one of my favorite books of all time, Stephen King's on writing. And it's like, and I saw a John Grisham interview in November that got me started my novel. He starts writing on January 1st every year and has for 20 years. He starts a new book on January 1st every year. Usually done first draft by May, June. And then the rest of the year, just trying to get that out. And then he starts over again. So I think a little bit of discipline can help new writers is, make it fit your schedule, but, crank out, leave an hour a day to at least do something.
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I think the schedule that you have, which is like a first thing in the morning, high energy writing block that is
your brain's
uninterrupted
freshest
and protected, you're fresh, there's no interruptions. That's the highest odds of success thing that we see at Scribe over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people writing books is like, if you can get that, that protected time in the morning and just have discipline. And it's so, make it a game. Like especially when it's generative, when you're just racking up the word count and you're like, all right, I got to get to 40 or 50 or 60,000 words, whatever your target is, and you're putting up 1,000 or 2 a day, and you can just kind of like X off that day on the calendar and build a streak. Like, it's very fun.
Yeah. Cause it is. And like the next thing you know, you're like, well, I got 20,000 words and I've been at it for 2 months or whatever. Like, I'm on my way. Yeah. I think I can do this.
and the editing's no picnic, but like once it's there, especially if you're working with a team or an editor like Scribe or anybody else, once you're on that conveyor belt, you're like, all right, this thing's going to come out. Now it's just a matter of like, how good is it going to be? How much effort do we put into it?
Yep.
Which is it gives you a sense of peace of the like, all right.
I'll share with you a little story that I tell. I failed freshman English in college, and I failed on my writing, not on the grammar tests. And the professor said, why do you always write about sports? And I said, did you tell me I needed to write about different things? He said, no, I left it up to you. Well, then I wrote about sports. I mean, I'm 17 years old and this is what I know. But he failed me, literally like flunked the class. I had to retake it, later. So I always had this thing that said, you can't write. So when I talk about the challenge, you can't have a worse challenge than me. You've been told publicly that you're a failure with writing. You told all through college and high school I couldn't write. But when I went to grad school, my professor said, just vomit on the page and edit it later. Like, just write.
Well, yeah, the moral of that story to me isn't you can't write. It's that guy can't teach.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the most famous writing advice there is? Write what you know.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't think this guy ever saw a sport in his life. He's a wannabe, I don't know. I'll stop.
Is a tweet. These are the symptoms of institutional decline and academic mistrust. It all started with this guy.
Yeah.
And his,
I got a book. I'm sure he's long past, but I feel like I got a book for you. I know where you can put it too.
Well, this is not the segue, but I did find it very enjoyable to send. I had a few English teachers that I like particularly loved, and sending my first book to them was very rewarding. Just just to kind of close the loop, I imagine teachers just have decades and decades of open loops where they're kind of like, I wonder what that person's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I've sent the first one, which is a little bit half biography, half kind of lessons. And I've sent it to all my mentors in my life and said, you guys had a part of this. And that feels really good, by the way, if that's the only, good thing you do in this book world.
Yeah. It doesn't take a big number to have a rewarding experience writing a book over and over and over again. That's what I hear authors kind of, the stories that they tell are these like heartwarming moments of relationships that almost always already exist or are strengthened, through the learning that happens in a book.
Yeah. And a reminder that we're one of many people in this big old world, and those connections matter. Anyway.
It does. And that, we are all where we are. We've learned from generations upon generations that took the time to write their things down. And, books are a very long-term medium. And there's no, I'm a digital creator. I do lots of podcasts and Twitter and blogs, but like, there's something about books, the longevity of them and the timelessness of them that we're contributing to future generations of, gesture at the shelves behind you.
Yeah, the shelves behind me. They're important.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll never, we're planting seeds of trees we'll never sleep under, but somebody will. And, this is the writing version of that. Chris, this has been a really fun and amazing conversation. I wish it was longer. I hope we have many more. Is there anything else that is top of mind that you wish? I feel like I would hit minesweepers of stories, and now I'm paranoid that I'm missing a golden nugget somewhere.
Well, I got lots of stories. I don't know how many of them are golden, but one of the things I'd say, I hold these open office hours. I have a website at my last name, Heivly, HEIVLY.com. I have a blog there that if you care about entrepreneurs or your city or how you support entrepreneurship, that's weekly. They're all 300 to 500 words, so you're in and out really quick. And then I'll give you my email address for anybody who wants to chat, chris@buildthefort.com, or you go to the website and sign up for office hours, 20 minutes virtual. They're my favorite part of the day. Been doing them for 12 years. And so we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. We're going to talk about books. We can talk about Traverse City, whatever it is.
That's super fun. I love it. Well, maybe I'll see you in an office hours. Thank you
cool.
very much for taking the time. Thank you for speaking. Appreciate you writing and sharing everything that you do.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.